that was going to sound bad. That was going to come out really wrong.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Cinefile, the podcast celebrating cinema one film at a time. Each week, my co-host Jake Biller and I break down a film, discussing anything from mise en scène to scenes you missed. Today, we are talking 2019's Dolemite Is My Name. This is part of our kind of pseudo-series about the Oscar winners from this past month, chatting and saying, hey, what's another film from their filmography, and let's talk about it. So today, we're talking about Da'Vine Joy Randolph. And Jake, it was your pick this week. So why'd you pick it? I mean, obviously, we kind of know why'd you pick it. And what are your thoughts?
So yes, this was my pick. I picked this because I believe I got this off of the Academy's website in like their kind of press junket or whatever before or about the Academy Award winners. So that I'm citing my source there. Whether that's true or not is on them and not on me. But this is apparently the role that Alexander Payne, the director of the Holdovers, he saw Da'Vine Joy Randolph in this movie. She plays Lady Reed, and said, you know, I got a spot for her in the Holdovers. So I felt like this was a fitting movie to talk about for her, since it apparently got her the job for the Holdovers. I had not seen this before this week. If you saw the end of last week's episode, you know I had not seen this. I knew of Da'Vine Joy Randolph, but I knew of her prior to the Holdovers because of Only Murders in the Building. She was on the first two seasons of that show playing a NYPD detective, featured more prominently in the first season than the second. But I enjoyed her in that. I enjoyed her very much in the Holdovers, and I enjoyed her in this. I really just enjoyed this movie all around. I don't have a lot negative to say about it. I mean, how can you not love Eddie Murphy just like being Eddie Murphy to like the highest level?
This film, I had seen this film when it came out because I'm a big Eddie Murphy guy, and this was his first starring role in a long time. He kind of took some years off of Hollywood, and then came back, and he was like, hey, I want to do this project. And it was touted as somewhat of a kind of even an Oscar bait kind of movie in a lot of ways. It didn't exactly get to the finish line when it comes to that, but man, is he well cast and well used here as Rudy Ray Moore. If you ask around, a lot of people aren't going to know who Dolemite is. They aren't going to know who Rudy Ray Moore is. And I think that's one of the beauties of a great biopic, is when you can find out and learn more about somebody that had such a big impact, but that you've never heard of.
You're exactly right. That's where, biopics of well-known figures are interesting and definitely are usually popular. But I always tend to enjoy the biopics of the more obscure characters or the people I don't know a lot about. Talking about Oscars this year, take Oppenheimer, for example. Before Christopher Nolan's movie, I could have told you J. Robert Oppenheimer led the Manhattan Project and built the atomic bomb and quoted the Bhagavad Gita after they successfully detonated the test. And that is the extent I could tell you about J. Robert Oppenheimer. But that movie just like expanded upon this fascinating figure and his struggles and his skeletons so much. And I think this in a much more comedic way, don't get me wrong, but this takes a very kind of similar approach in a way with this, because you're right. Like I had no idea who Dolemite was or Rudy Ray Moore. And I even I haven't seen a ton of Blaxploitation, but like I enjoy some Blaxploitation movies. It's definitely a genre I was exposed to in college in one of my film classes, and I really kind of enjoy it from its kind of unique spin on like 70s 70s Hollywood. So, but yeah, I had not heard of Dolemite. I've still haven't seen Dolemite or anything else Rudy Ray Moore did, but it was fun learning about this guy, right? It was interesting. It was really interesting seeing how he just kind of was like, I'm just doing this. You know, he was like, I'm going to be funny. And he built his whole comedy empire. And then he's like, why can't I be in the movies? And I think that even just really resonated with me as someone who's always wanted to be a filmmaker, and see my work up on the big screen. I think that was just a very, I don't know, that early on that really just endeared me to this character, even though I share very little in common with Mr. Dolemite, to ends of the spectrum, if you will. But that really endeared me to this character and made me want to follow and really root for this character, even though this movie seems to be like so wacky and absurd and like cheaper than cheaply made.
Basically, to kind of put us in the setting here. So Dolemite Is My Name is about Rudy Ray Moore, he's kind of an entertainer that hasn't really found his niche. He hasn't really found where he kind of belongs in the entertainment space. And he kind of comes upon this idea of creating a character based on some of the homeless guys that would come into the record shop that he worked at as an assistant manager or something like that. And so he goes, gets some money, grabs some booze, and goes and sits down and records all of these different homeless folks telling their stories. And he kind of crafts that into an act as a character named Dolemite. And so this movie kind of follows his rise to stardom and then his decision to kind of bet the farm on making a movie. And then we kind of see the aftermath of that decision. This reminded me a lot of The Room, the movie The Room, with Tommy Wiseau, and which is a movie that I own, even though it's considered one of the worst, if not the worst movie ever made. I'm such a fan. And The Disaster Artist from actually like the same year, or maybe the year prior, where that is kind of the exploration of him making this movie. The thing I kind of wanted to talk about, and you mentioned it first, was this idea of blaxploitation film. Mm-hmm. So if you, Jake, could explain to us a little bit, what is blaxploitation film? It sounds a little weird, but it's an important genre in the 1970s Hollywood.
Yeah, the calling it blaxploitation kind of raises some eyebrows. It definitely raised my eyebrows the first time I heard about it. And basically, blaxploitation was just a genre of movies that came out in the 1970s in Hollywood, in the early 70s, and it was about making movies for like no money about black characters and marketing those to a black audience, right? Because you saw the big budget pictures of the time, and you know, we've made progressions, but you know, there's still a long way to go in a lot of ways. That's a conversation for a different time. But in the 70s, much more so, you know, you didn't see black heroes on screen. We were starting to get black actors getting, you know, named parts of speaking roles and stuff, but they were always supporting characters. And the execs of some of these smaller studios in Hollywood decided, hey, we can make movies about black people, and black people are probably going to go see that. So the term blaxploitation comes about because it's supposed to be exploiting black people by just saying, hey, we're going to make movies that have black people in it to exploit the black public to give us their money. But it developed into so much more than that, because you see very much kind of so you see it coming out in this movie, and kind of Rudy's inspiration to make Dolemite is because he went to the movie and they watched supposedly the funniest comedy at the time. and he and his black friends didn't think it was funny because they didn't relate to it. It was about white people, and they didn't find a lot of commonality to their own lives. So with Blaxploitation, you get opportunities because there's no money and the very low stakes involved. You get opportunities for black filmmakers like Melvin Van Peebles and black leading actors. I think of one of my favorites, as Ben already knows, Shaft, starring Richard Roundtree. Love Shaft. But you see black people take heroic roles. You see stories told about black people, and it really, the strategy worked. It was all made as kind of a big kind of marketing strategy or business strategy of tapping into the black audience, and it worked because, lo and behold, people want to see people on screen that look like them. They want to feel like they can connect with the characters. They want to feel like they see themselves on screen. And so this obviously, Dolemite is another, I think it came out in 1975, I believe, give or take a year. And, it is very much a blaxploitation film from what I understand and what I've seen in the movie. And it's just, blaxploitation was never about, like crystal clean characters, right? Your heroes are always kind of dirty, always, rough around the edges. And I think it's interesting watching this movie about Rudy Ray Moore, who made a blaxploitation movie. This almost feels like a blaxploitation movie in a way, and maybe it's just because I'm in that headspace watching it, and that's something that's being talked about. But it's like, Rudy Ray Moore is not. What's the line? His aunt talks about, or is it his aunt or his grandma or his mom?
It's his aunt.
It's his aunt. Okay, I got it. I had it right the first time. She's talking about how, he's so profane. His comedy is so profane and he swears too much. And she makes some comment. I wrote it down here. Needs to be more like that sweet Bill Cosby guy. And it turns out Bill Cosby wasn't so sweet after all. But that aside, Bill Cosby's atrocities aside, right? He is not Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was, a clean comic. He was almost a white man's comic, if you will, as a black man. And so it felt very, that is not who Rudy Ray Moore is, right? He's dirty. He's vulgar.
Dolemite.
But he feels more real in that way, right? And he feels easier to connect with because, especially nowadays, like the people aren't so prim and proper, and the profanity, like that's not the world we live in today.
Right.
But how, that's a hallmark of blaxploitation, is those kind of almost anti-heroes or heroes that are rough around the edges, but still succeed and kick ass at the end of the day. They don't just succeed. They do it in epic fashion, just like Dolemite does. And so I think it's really interesting, knowing the origins of blaxploitation, and like when you can look at it through this lens, you can see the strings that tie blaxploitation and this movie together.
You're absolutely right when you say this is almost like a blaxploitation film in and of itself. And I think it may be the profanity that they use, because I mean, that is kind of how he talked. That's kind of how he and his friends kind of chatted. And so I think chatted, that's like the most white thing I could say about black people talking. Yeah. We talked over tea. But that's how they talked. And so I think I could see like the profanity in and of itself kind of giving off that blaxploitation vibe, but it definitely was a genre of film. And the strategy behind blaxploitation film is something that is still used today in a lot of ways. There are different genres, different niches of different peoples of all race, ethnicity, color, creed, whatever. They have different kind of smaller genres that really appeal to these people. And we as a film fan community have kind of embraced the big blockbuster as that's what film is. And it's not. And that's why you see a lot of the different Academy Award winning films not being huge box office smash hits. So I think that this movie is still very, very relatable to today because of those same tactics, because people want to see themselves represented on screen and will reward that by going and seeing it. But you have to have the people that are willing to dip their toes in, to be the canary in the coal mine, if you will, and say, hey, we're going to try this. And that's kind of what Rudy Ray Moore did, right? His comedy was so successful that he wanted to expand his reach. And it wasn't necessarily a super innocent expansion. Like he wanted money, right? But that's not the total reason. You know, he wanted to make a movie with people like him on the screen, and he felt like he wasn't seeing a lot of that. You saw that in Shaft, but a lot of films, and there are a lot of Rudy Ray Moore Dolemite movies. And that's kind of another hallmark of Blaxploitation film. Is there a lot of, I don't want to see they're cheap and thrown together and you know made a ton of them at one time, but they kept cranking them out because people kept coming to see it. And so I just thought, like, it's so relevant to today. Yeah. This idea of kind of having these niche audiences, and so I really appreciated it for that. I thought the performances were fantastic. You know, this specifically, Da'Vine Joy Randolph, she was really good. I had forgotten that she was in this because it's such an Eddie Murphy vehicle that I had totally forgotten. But and you can see where Alexander Payne said, hey, I want this person for my film. Just from the way in which she portrays that character of Lady Reed, and she's hilarious too. Oh my gosh, she's hilarious in this. And I think her chemistry with Eddie Murphy is palpable. It's there. So yeah, I'm a real big fan of this film, but I'm really real big fan of her in this film too.
So I was watching this, and I knew that this was the role that supposedly Alexander Payne saw and said, I want this woman to play Mary in the Holdovers. And these characters on the surface or on paper are kind of very very different. And so I was interested to see, excuse me, I was interested to see where the connection was or what inspired him. And Lady Reed has this like tenacity and a very strong backbone that I think you see in a more subtle way, and maybe it's a more developed way in Mary in the Holdovers. And I think that's something that Da'Vine Joy Randolph does very well. Being a character who's not going to be walked over, walked all over. She's going to stick up for herself. She's going to have strength. She's going to have tenacity. And I think it's maybe buried under a couple layers in the Holdovers, right? It's a more complex and obviously it's a very different, like I said, different role than Lady Reed here in Dolemite. But I still see kind of the connection there, which I think is really, really neat. And I kind of felt the same way with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from last week, right? Seeing the sinews and the way that actors mature from role to role and they change. And I just think that's fascinating, right? Because these aren't just characters on the screen. Like I'm maybe it's because I love movies and I have a movie podcast and I like making movies and I like thinking about movies and talking about movies. But
no shit.
I'm very aware that these aren't just characters on a screen. There's an artist behind them developing these roles. And I like to see how actors and filmmakers progress from movie to movie and are able to change their performances to meet this character and create new characters. So I think it was a really interesting watch from that aspect, because like you said, this is a very Eddie Murphy heavy movie.
You're a bit doughy.
It is definitely a vehicle for him. So I think on a pure, just like straight, I don't know anything fresh watch. Maybe some other these. You notice them in the moments, but it's easy to get lost behind the big and loud performance that is Eddie Murphy as Dolemite.
The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about is you and I have both been on sets of not like big studio movies, but like our own sets and kind of creating short films and things like that. And I just felt like this was so relatable. Like this entire shoot was like the most mood thing ever. Like that. I mean, I've been on your set, like, you know, and like, and it's sometimes shots just aren't there. And especially when you're working with non-actors, sometimes you're not going to be able to get the performance. And it's not because of you as a director. It's just because like, you just don't have it. Like, you know, like the character or the actor just doesn't have it. And the whole scene of him doing kung fu like really badly and like hitting a guy once and he falls straight perfectly into the trunk of the car. And he goes like, did we get it? He's like, yeah. I was just like, that is such a like a filmmaker thing. Like, I mean, we had when you were doing your short film, there was an actor in that that just wasn't up to snuff. And so like I don't think was I there? I don't know if I was there, but I definitely saw all the different takes of it. And you have to like carefully edit, you know, around some things. And, you know, it just was, it was just so relatable for me than making this movie, because when you're in college, you're making a movie or you're making a movie with friends. Like it's not necessarily about, oh, this needs to be the most prim and proper thing ever. It's about the experience. And it's clear that they were having a lot of fun doing this. I mean, the bedroom scene was so fried. Like that is so.
I laughed so hard. That was so like.
Because
it was so wild, but it was so. It was so funny. It was
such a fourth wall break. Like it was like such a wink to the audience that like in a proper studio picture, you'd be like, okay, like that ain't it. Like, you know, that's too on the nose. It'll take you out of the movie. But it was just so ridiculous. And they just kind of didn't care.
No.
You know, put your weight on it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Thunderous sex. Is that what the movie is going to be called?
Sex that triggers an earthquake.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Seismic sex. I really related to a lot of these different, you know, I think I texted you as like, it was wild when they just stole the electricity from the next building over, you know, because they couldn't power the place. And I was like, yep, that's I feel that.
When you don't know what you don't know about filmmaking and you're making it for no money, you just do what you can to survive. And, you know, that's honestly, that's one thing I love about filmmaking and being on sets, and just video production in general is like, you're going to have problems. That's a given. And it's about how do you figure out workarounds around these problems, right? Because everything costs money and you never have enough time. You never have enough time and you never have enough money. Because
besides George Lucas, like
even when you do, you screw it up. Looking at you, James Bay. But it's like I don't know. It's just it's so just there was just an energy to it that I really related to and appreciated, because it's just like this raw energy of like, I don't know, try this, let's do this. But it's that spontaneity of like using what you know and what you have available to get the product that you want. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But that's like the beauty of filmmaking, because you can have the best actors, you can have the worst actors, and sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it's going to not. You can have a great director, you can have a terrible director that doesn't know what the heck he's doing. And it's going to work sometimes and it's not. It's this magic of like, I've talked about it before, I think on this podcast, but it's like movies are just like, so much of it lines up to the right people doing the right thing, peaking at the right time. And it's just like, there's so many instances when everything seems like it's like, you know, like, oh, we've got the best director, we've got this big budget, you know, we've got all this time, we've got all the great actors and stuff. And it doesn't work out for whatever reason. Just like, you can't capture that magic in a bottle. And so when you do have it, it makes it all that more special. And I think, I think for all the shortcomings that Dolemite seems to be as a movie, there was a magic in that it was fun to make. People looked like they enjoyed making it. And so it's just like, even if that's the magic, I can relate to that. And I appreciated seeing that brought to life. And it was even more fun to watch.
I feel like we sometimes forget what cinema is. You know, we get swept up in the Oscar bait and we get swept up in the big blockbuster. But I mean, it is a moving picture, right? It is art. And, you know, it doesn't have to be poor things, which is, you know,
poor
art
quality.
for freaking, which is like cursed art for art's sake. But it doesn't have to be that. It's the culmination of a lot of different time, a lot of different players bringing their skills to the table, and you're making something. It's like a painting, right? You know, you go to an art museum, or there are people that buy art that I look at and I'm like, that's stupid. Why would you want that in your house? Like, that is, you know, it's like that episode of Seinfeld where George has to buy a bunch of triangles because he thinks the guy's going to die. And then it's going to be worth a ton. And then he recovers and he's just stuck with all the triangles.
You know, if the guy dies, the art could really be worth something.
You saved my life, George. You buying my art is what inspired me to get better. I'll never forget what you did for me.
Oh, well, that's great. It's really great.
You know, art's a great investment.
Yeah, they're gonna look great in your apartment, George.
Yes, I look forward to many years of looking at the triangles.
You know, it's like, but somebody finds interest in that. And they probably add that to a collection, like a triangle collection. And the point is, triangles, point. The point, yeah. It's all the Illuminati, okay? That's what we need to, yeah. Illuminati, no. But the idea behind cinema is not just to entertain the audience. It's also to entertain the people making it. You know, painters, sculptors, sculptists, sculptaroonies.
Sculptaroonies.
Sculptomaniacs. And sculptors. Look, I got plenty of words up here, but sculptor was not in the freaking vocabulary today. You've got sculptors, you know, any sort of photography, photographers, shit. Okay. You've got all these people that are coming together. Oh my God. You've got all these people that are coming together, and it's so much fun for them as the person making the art because that's what they enjoy. And so it's sometimes, you know, and I, again, am not saying that I'm better or worse than anybody, but sometimes I rag on films where I kind of forget the whole point was to have fun. And so I will kind of dog it for not being great cinema, but that wasn't the point. The point is to entertain. And if it doesn't entertain you, it's going to entertain somebody else. Now we're going to go on into Rosebud and Thorn. Jake, I'm passing it off to you as I do every single week. What are your Rosebud and Thorn for Dolemite Is My Name?
You passed me off these roses so much. I'm surprising I don't get stuck from the thorns. Must be why I don't have many thorns this season. Roses. Gotta give
that was
one to
dumb. I'm sorry. That was what the hell? What
I don't
the hell
know.
was that?
I don't know, man.
He said it.
I say words, whether they make sense or not.
We're having a great time.
Yes.
Why we're not 2 marks in right now? No, that would be an iconic podcast. It's Cinefile After Dark.
Cinefile after 2 shots. Okay.
Anyway.
Roses. Gotta give one to Eddie Murphy, right? Like, this is clearly an Eddie Murphy vehicle. He's so funny in this. This is the kind of comedy that he really excels at, and he just eats up the screen with every minute. And also adds some layers. There's some nuance to it, right? And I really enjoy that. I enjoy when there's comedies that can give me, like, can have like, oh, we're going to stop and feel something a little bit, when it doesn't feel like out of place. Like, it felt very natural in this movie, right? But he's so funny, and he very much leads a picture and commands a picture. So I got to give a rose to him. I'm going to give roses also to Mike Epps, the Indianapolis native, actually, Da'Vine Joy Randolph, Wesley Snipes, and then the score and soundtrack. All those performers I named, great supporters to Eddie Murphy, right? We talked about how this can really kind of seem overbearing as an Eddie Murphy movie, but when you really dig in, like, there's some really good supporters there too. So I wanted to shout those out. And then the score and soundtrack, like, I just love this era of music in general. But it was so good. So I enjoyed one, the music itself, and 2, how it amplified the picture, made it better. So those are my roses. What, I got like 6 there, half dozen. I don't know. I can't count. My one bud is Keegan-Michael Key. It felt a little forced. Yeah. It felt a little stiff to me. It was funny that, or not, it was strange. I thought that the comedian, I mean, obviously there's a number of comedians in this, but they made the comedian be the not funny character. So
yeah,
it was just, I don't know. It felt, it wasn't funny enough for me to feel like it was a bit, and it wasn't nuanced enough for me to feel like it was serious. So it just felt this kind of like stiff, kind of flat thing.
Damn, Dolemite. Like, I was like, that's like the only thing I remember from his entire character.
Yeah. So yeah, that's gonna be my one. That's gonna be my one. Bud, and no thorns.
No thorns. For me, I'm going to give a rose to Eddie Murphy. Obviously, I think he's spectacular in this. This is one of the films that kind of brought him out of semi-retirement. Then, like, right after this is when he went and did Coming to America. And then, that's quite literally what the title was.
America.
And then we got Beverly Hills Cop 4, or Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley, something like that. Is coming out in May, which I'm very excited about.
You love that movie.
But Beverly Hills Cop is one of the greatest comedies of all time. Quote me. But I think he gives a spectacular performance here. There is some nuance to it, and it just shows how much of a performer he is. In his later years, he's not just the funny black comic. He's got some depth to his acting pedigree, and so I appreciate that. Da'Vine Joy Randolph is going to get a rose from me as well. I think I can see why Alexander Payne picked her. She's got some gravitas and kind of some strength to her role that she just effortlessly, executes. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm also going to give a rose to the idea. Well, like, I like Craig Robinson a lot. I like him in this a lot. But his specific rendition of the Dolemite theme and kind of all the music that he does, because they have a lot of the Dolemite music kind of in the background. I really like that a lot. So I really appreciated that. And it just a shout out to Snoop. Any movie that Snoop Dogg is in, I'm here for.
The D-O-double-G.
Yeah. And so very interesting. I guess I didn't realize this. So Rudy Ray Moore kind of invented rap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's considered the grandfather of rap, but the way in which Dolemite would speak and the rhyming and things like that was kind of a jumping off point for a lot of rappers. And so a lot of rappers consider him like the grandfather of rap. So I found an interview of Snoop talking about that, talking about Rudy Ray Moore back in the day. So I thought it was cool that he made a cameo in this film. I'm going to agree with you that Keegan-Michael Key is going to get a bud from me. I also felt like his performance was quite forced and was like a weak link. You know, he's so hit or miss, in my opinion. There's times where he's really, really funny, but there are times where he's trying to be more dramatic, and I don't get it. I don't feel it from him. And so I felt like this was one of those where he wasn't just the standout funny character. And like, I think his voice work is probably better. Like when he does voice work, I think it's funnier, and I think he's better than when he does but he just kind of seems like a forced character. Yeah. Even though this is real life, you know what I mean? So yeah.
He always does his best work as substitute teachers.
Hey, Ron. Yeah. Yeah. So I think he's still trying to capture the magic of Key and Peele now that Jordan Peele's out on his own and just hasn't been able to do it. Yeah. And no thorns for me either. Now we're going to move into some final thoughts. Jake, what are your final thoughts on Dolemite Is My Name?
Final thoughts. I'm glad we watched this. It's funny. It's entertaining. There's a lot more to it when you really dig into it. But you don't have to. You can just sit back and enjoy it and laugh at a seismic sex scene or the cheesiest kung fu since, I don't know, ever. It's just funny. It's entertaining.
Since Charles Entertainment Cheese cut up a mug. That's the cheesiest kung fu since Charles Entertainment Cheese went off the rails.
Anyway. This is just an entertaining movie. I really enjoyed it. Definitely one I'll rewatch because it's that much fun. So yeah, if you like profane, raucous, funny movies that maybe have a little more to them, definitely would recommend this.
Yeah, I highly recommend this film. It is riddled with profanity, which sometimes can kind of be for me. But it is just it's so funny. It's so funny. And I relate to it so much as being somebody that has been on sets before and is a creative, seeing kind of it come together and just how much fun they were having just really reminded me how much fun I have. So I really, really appreciated it for that. Great performances all around, great music. And Rudy Ray Moore is an important character, I think, in the history of cinema that people kind of forget about. So really appreciate him for that. And overall, a great, great film. But the question is for you folks. Have you seen Dolemite Is My Name? Did you know about Dolemite at all? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. We love hearing from you. If you like this video, hit that like button and ring that bell with the subscribe button to get all notifications on upcoming content. Next week, we are talking about La La Land from 2016. That is for Emma Stone, who won Best Actress. We're going to be talking about one of her more popular roles in La La Land, and that was my pick. I love La La Land, so
never seen it actually. So
really,
yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that, but that's good to know because you're watching it next week. Make sure to follow us on social media. Follow myself, Jake, the Cinefile. You see all the links just as always. For Jake Biller, I'm Ben Sparrow. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week. And cut.